All right. Hello, YouTubers and flight simulation fans. I am conducting my first tutorial based off of a request for somebody that saw one of my previous videos. Just as a little note to everyone, this is my first tutorial. I normally don't do tutorials. I just put basic videos online so that my family across the country and across the world are able just to see my little flight sim hobby. As I'm a flight sim enthusiast and not a real pilot. However, I do have the desire to potentially get my private pilot license one day. Retired Army, got 6 kids, not able to do it right now, but hopefully in the future I will. If not, it'll continue to be a hobby for mine for as long as I can think of. Now, with that being said, the video capture that I use to shoot these videos is not a high tech, third party service that I use to do these videos. It's just open software broadcasting freeware that I use, which is right here. So there is no, high tech, cutting and pasting and editing and all that fancy stuff in there. So if you don't mind that, basically what we want to do is do a tutorial of this Carenado's rendition of the Beechcraft 350 India or I. So as you can see here, we are at Ontario International Airport in Southern California, not too far from where I reside in the state. And we are going to take a flight today from here to Fresno, Yosemite, which is normally about a 4 hour car drive, and hopefully we get it done in 51 minutes once we get airborne or less. With that being said, Coronado's rendition of the Beechcraft 350i, outside the model, the sim object itself looks beautiful. There are some shortcomings on the inside with some of the autopilot features that I don't find too troubling. But there are, there's some there's slight little glitches, and as I go through the aircraft and the startup, I will kind of point those out. I am not a subject matter expert on this aircraft by any means, but I've flown it a few times. I'm able to fly it online. I typically fly on the VATSIM network and use air traffic control, and so I'm able to do that and get the bird up in the air, follow the flight plan, follow the instructions, and get the bird on the ground safely with a good grease landing usually. And so somebody's asked me to do a tutorial, so I don't mind doing it. So here I am. And lastly, amongst my 6 children, I have an 18-year-old all the way down to a 9-month-old baby. So you may hear some noise in the background. I can't do anything about it. Leave comments if you like hearing the children. All right, so let's go ahead and by the way, this airport here is freeware off the AvSim website. It's not too bad. Um, so that's all. That's all free if you like to go in there and find uh, some, update the airport. All right, jumping on in. The first thing that I do want to highlight is that this aircraft has a lot of simulated buttons, which is the good thing about it, and that's what flight simmers who like the edge of reality or want to actually fly enjoy. Um, so there's a lot of buttons in here, and it's I would always recommend that even though the documentation provided with the software is very limited, just to familiarize yourself with the aircraft. And part of the way I did that is just taking the checklists that they provide you, which is I just pulled it up PDF here because I like to save paper. But you know what? You can go through the checklist, and you can even start here on the pre-flight inspection, which starts I think at page 2. It goes all the way to page 6, and you can just familiarize yourself with all of these different items that it lists. And then if you go through the before engine starting checklist, which I believe runs 2 pages, you'll go over some of the same stuff you've seen. So it's going to familiarize yourself. It's going to help you to familiarize yourself with the cockpit, where things are, so on and so forth. Again, now having said that, because I'm just doing a tutorial and I don't want a 3 hour video, I am not necessarily going to do this by the book, by the checklist. I do it when I fly, but that's because I'm not trying to provide other information about the aircraft to a listening audience. So, if when you fly, and this if this tutorial helps you, you will be able to go through and do the actual checklist, adhere to it as much as you want or not. Again, this is flight simulation, so there's that ability to forego the actual procedures if you'd like, which I'm going to be doing here. I'll do sort of a flow and kind of point out some stuff, but I'm not going to go through the actual checklist. Another thing before we get started that I do want to bring up is that in one of the very limited pieces of documentation that is provided, we find ourselves having performance tables. And so I am flying this aircraft today with a tank full of gas, pretty much. My gross weight is 13,958 pounds. So I'm rounding up, as you can see here, to the next poundage in the chart of 14,000 pounds. And so here, I want to point this out. So if you want to get your V1, V rotate, and V climb out, or your V2 speeds, you can get them from right here. There's nowhere to put it in the actual avionics anywhere, but you can write it down on a piece of paper and have it handy just so that you know. And and I'll show you how I get my temperatures and everything. Like I said, I use very limited paper. The only thing I use is a scratch piece of paper, and that's usually when I'm flying online to write down the transponder code and some of the various instructions from the ATC. So I've written down these already. I just wanted to show you this. Okay, so we have our V speeds to get your weight and all that good stuff on the Microsoft Flight Simulator X, which is what I'm using, Steam Edition. You do the fuel and payload, and you will be able to adjust your fuel accordingly. Now, this flight that I'm taking only takes, as you see here, the fuel usage is only 787 pounds of fuel. The reserve fuel is supposed to be 1,155 pounds. It gives you an hour and 15 minutes of reserve fuel, giving the total takeoff fuel weight of 1,942 pounds. Again, I'm just doing a tutorial, so I'm not adhering to that. I just wanted to show you all that you can go to the fuelplanner.com, plug your plane in if it's listed on there, which this one is, and calculate your fuel if you want to fly at the actual weight that you're supposed to. Now, I mentioned that I got the weather. I am using Flight Simulator Steam, therefore I am using the overlay that is provided. As a function, you can map your keys, which will bring it up, which means you don't have to actually be out of the flight simulator. You're actually in it. You'll hear all the sounds. Your joystick will move all the controls. However, you'll be in this screen here with the overlay. So right now, I clicked on Ontario, as you can see here, and the current altimeter is 30.02 with an outside temperature of 24 Celsius. Right now, the wind direction is calm for the most part. We've got winds at 4 knots coming from 250 degrees basically from the west. So again, I am not going to completely adhere to that. Normally they would give you a runway where you're flying into the wind, or you're flying that direction at 250 degrees, or the closest runway that's appropriate to that. However, I'm not doing that for simplicity. I'm doing a short taxi to runway 8 right for our departure. With that being said, we in our flight plan, which I have also used FlightAware to come up with this flight plan, we are going to be leaving on the Palm 9 departure, or Pomona 9, but it's, the abbreviation is the Palm 9. So the Pomona 9 departure for runway 8. So I'm going to pull up this chart and just show you these are the charts that I use. These are the shortcuts that I take instead of using paper. Again, this is more about learning this aircraft, so I'm not going to bore you guys with that, but I'm just showing you what I use. Because we are going to be following an actual flight plan, because I want to show you how the flight management computer, or the FMS, or the control display unit, or CDU, whichever you prefer to call it, is utilized. And therefore, I'm just going to show you this departure, and then I'm going to show you how well Carenado has done a good job emulating the Proline 21 avionics, which will match this departure. So if you see here, we're leaving on runway 8 right. If you see here, there are and so I'm had a little brain fart there. We're going to be transitioning to EHF, which is our transition vortex and our departure. So again, here you can read what we need to do leaving runways 8 left or 8 right. With the DAG transition, we're doing EHF, which is right here. So it tells us we need to do a standard climb with the minimum climb of 282 feet per minute, for nautical mile rather, to 8,500. And we're gonna, and we also are going to be on the heading of 258, which you see here. This is runway 8. We're going to do a little nice right turn, pick up 258, and then you're supposed to pick up this radial here at a heading of 294 to intercept the Pomona VOR, which is here, and that is the radial 114. That's what we're doing. Not going too much into that. So now, without further ado, let's get into the cockpit here and get this plane started up. Now, a shortcoming that this plane does have, normally when you're putting your flight plan and getting your avionics set and going through your checklist, you add power to the aircraft using the ground power unit, or GPU, or you fire up the APU, which is the alternate power unit. Now, this plane does not have an APU, and unfortunately, the GPU power is not simulated visually or actually, which means that if you turn the batteries on this aircraft on, which are located here, and I'll go through some other better snapshots of that using the A button on the keyboard, because I don't have Easy Dock, or I'm not using Track IR at this point. Your aircraft will lose power, battery power, without the engine being started in about 7 minutes, which is not good, which is not good at all. So I'm going to show you, what needs to be done to keep the aircraft with power in order to get your aircraft set up. Now, having said that, I'm already going to tell you that we're going to be running an engine to do that. So what I would do, if you are doing actual flight weight and flight fuel that it takes to get from point A to point B, I would throw in a little more fuel. Even though this aircraft doesn't burn a whole lot running one engine at a low idle in order to keep the power on, I would still do it personally. Maybe put a couple extra 100 pounds of fuel in there if you want. To each their own. So we're in the cockpit. The cockpit, like I said, is modeled very nicely. The textures of the seat and everything, and you can also see back into the passenger cabin. So that's very nice. So now, what I normally do is I get rid of the yoke right away. If I get up in the air and start flying and want to see it simulated, then I'll put it back. Otherwise, it gets in my way. And I'll do that also for the co-pilot. Now, I've already, before starting this video, zoomed in on a couple of key areas using the A button. So if you just scroll through, the first time you push A, it's going to bring you over to the first officer side. Then I've zoomed into this, so it initially starts out this far back. But when you zoom in using the A button, when you're cycling through, it doesn't allow you to use your POV hat to move around. So I just zoom in to where it's fixated on. This one happens to be the fuel panel. And then the next is going to be the power control deck here. I don't know if that's what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it. And you can see you have your aileron trim and your rudder tab, your rudder trim. You have access to your flaps, friction points, your power, your prop, and your conditioners. Up here is the overhead, which we'll be using this here in a minute. Now, one thing I want you to take note of, right now, you do not have any power on. This knob is set to off. In a perfect world where this was simulated perfectly, we would set our external power on the battery, the pilot's sub panel, the battery switch, and then make sure this is on external power so that you can see, what's on the voltmeter, and you would have power coming in. Again, if I click it, which I am not because I don't want to have to restart this video, if you clicked it right here, one click over, it would say CRT, and you would have some power here for about 7 minutes, and then it'll go dead. You're absolutely not able to put any more power back on the plane. You'll have to exit out of the simulator and reload the plane. Having said that, if this were to work, this is where you would actually be able to move it depending on where your power source was coming in to see the correct amount of volts. However, we're going to use an engine, so we'll just be monitoring the DC volts, because even when I have the generators tied in, it still doesn't show anything up over here. So, I mean, I'm not going to cry about it. It's just one of their shortcomings. I'll zoom out a little bit. This is the actual one of the pilot's sub panels here on the left. This is where is our battery panel. Now, this is where we're going to start. I'm not going to go scrolling through the whole plane. I'll just tell you that I'm hitting A to get there, or you can use the virtual cockpit and do it that way. I'm doing it this way that you can see better. So the first thing that we're going to do to the aircraft, which is, like I said, not in perfect alignment with what the checklists are, I'm just doing my own flow to get the bird up in the air and to show you what to do, is to start messing with this battery panel. Now, what we're going to do, even before we start messing with the battery panel, we're going to make sure that our prop conditioners and our propeller control are where they need to be. So I'm going to go right back into the virtual cockpit, and in order to start this aircraft, according to the checklist, your prop lever should be all the way full forward. You can hold your mouse over it to make sure it says 100%, and then your conditioners should be at fuel cutoff, which they are. They're cut or at 0%, and of course your throttle power here, which is controlled by your joystick, should be all the way down in the idle position. Now, I am going to use engine number 2, or the right engine, in order to actually keep power on the plane. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring it forward just a hair, because I want some fuel to go in there. And I already have the prop conditioner already forward on both of them at this point, which we're going to do another little trick here during taxi with this to start engine number 2. Now I'll cycle back over to our sub panel here, and let's get it going. Now, this is the external power in a perfect world that you would want to use along with the overhead switch to put it to external power. Again, there's no need for us to even mess with this. So we're going to do just exactly that, not mess with it. So let's go ahead and get some power on the bird. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to put our battery bus switch in the normal position. Again, this is not a perfect flow. And then I'm going to take the battery switch and cut it on, and you can hear a click. You can actually hear some things, systems revving up already. I'm going to turn on the avionics, and then immediately I'm going to start the right engine. If you notice here, the left and right generator bus ties are closed. They are not tied in right now. So as you notice me click, and you can just left click with your mouse right here on the right engine, this automatically also brings up this engine auto ignition, which is a part of your checklist, which you will definitely want to use when you get the bird in the air. So you can hear the engine coming up, and we'll actually be able to see it rotating. Now, one thing that you do want to pay attention to is your N1 and your internal turbine temperature here. You want to make sure they're not all in the red. I'm not going to go over what the perfect numbers are, but monitor them. They're going to go up. The internal turbine temperature is going to go up past the red and then come back down. The engine N1 is going to start stabilizing. At this point, what you want to do is simply come down here once it's stabilized, and you want to put your right engine conditioner level into the low idle. Once you put that into the low idle, okay, you can come over here and turn your right generator on. At this point, your aircraft is not going to lose power. You will stay with power and it will not cut off, and you're going to burn minimal fuel. So if you come up here, up top, now you will notice that our direct current load percentage is at 100% on the right engine. Again, if you turn this, that's the initial power that you get when you turn it on. But if we got the right generator on, if you go to the right generator, you don't even see anything working here. So again, I don't even mess with that anymore. So that's off, but here we are. We're going to have power. So let's keep going. I do apologize. It's my first tutorial. Hope I'm not talking too much, and I hope I didn't do too much stuff with the flight aware and the overlay. You can always fast forward this video to where you want to be, so that's the good thing about YouTube. Okay, now that we have the right engine on and we know we're not going to lose power, I'm just simply going to proceed as if I'm going on a regular flight. So the first thing that I would have done on the air traffic, with the air traffic control rather, with departure or with delivery clearance, would have been to get my flight plan, which is IFR approved. They would have told me what the altimeter is, and they would have given me my routing and also given me a transponder code to put in the transponder. So at this point, that's what I'm going to do. My transponder code will be 2200 because I am flying IFR. I am not flying on the VATSIM network, but the only thing that we have online is the actual weather. I am using the Active Sky Next. So here is our current altimeter, which is the standard altimeter once we get above the transition altitude of 18,000 or flight level 180. I am going to move this to the 30.02 so that I don't forget to do it, because I'm doing my own flow and not going to the checklist. Now that that's done, I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to put my transponder code on. Don't worry that this is off. This is going to come up later in a minute. This is our secondary horizon, and it's all digital, so we'll use the system to bring it up. It does have a lag time or initialization time that it takes to come on board, but then once it does, the altimeter will also match here for our horizon and our altitude. Now, here's our air traffic control or transponder input, which you can also do it using the flight management computer, but we're going to do it here. So all you do is left click here, and we're going to click this outer knob to move through the digits. I can go back and forth. Once my digit is selected that I want, in this case it's the first one, I'm just going to click the inner knob and move it to 2. It's already on altitude by default. If you want to take it off of altitude or take it back to squawk standby, then you just simply right click this, and then I would click this on to off. I'm not going to do it, no big deal. Again, we're not flying online, I'm just trying to give a simple tutorial here. Alright, the nav radio is pretty much the same way, only instead of left clicking here to move it, you are going to left click it here. I'm going to go to Unicom as if I were flying online with no air traffic control available. So on this one, the outer knob is going to move this first set of numbers, and the inner knob will move the second set of numbers. And I'm referring to first set and second set after the decimal. So I'm going to go to 122.800, which is the Unicom station or frequency. Once I have reached that station, all I have to do is right click, or excuse me, left click with my mouse, and it will change this station from being on the right side to the left side, and this is the active side. Okay, this is the active navigation, or which you can use for VORs to track, but we're flying using the flight management computer. We really won't mess with that until we put in our ILS information. Now that that is running, the next thing that I would do that I want to show you, because if you do fly online you're going to need to know this, is that this is where you tie in your active radio stations with what you're actually receiving and transmitting. Right now, as you can see, it says transmit COM1, receive on COM1. Perfect. Let's say if I had a COM2 station programmed in, let's say if I wanted to use that for my ATIS to get the weather and the current airport information and what runways are being used, I could simply just click this too. It'll switch, and now this one is receiving, and I would be receiving and transmitting on COM station 2. We'll stick with 1. It's the same thing with the navigation, your distance measuring stuff here, and your ADF. it all works the same. So this is where it's at. So you have to use this little panel in conjunction with your flight management computer or your radio input station right here in order to have a perfect world of communication. All right, on to the next thing. So my next thing at this point, since I have power on the aircraft, is going to be to set up my flight management computer. Now, if you like looking at an angle, you can simply come over here. You can left click this armrest. It will come up, and the stuff is here. Now you can either slide shift your view over here. If you have easy dock, you would already have set it up, whatever the case may be. I don't like looking at an angle until I'm in the air, because then I'm not really doing a whole lot of input to it. Now, as I'm here, I want to just let you know, as you're going through your checklist, when you actually align yourself and follow and adhere to the checklist, one thing that you're going to want to know is where everything is located. Now, if you familiarize yourself with the aircraft, at some point it's going to ask you about activating the rudder boost. Okay. Now, if you see here on the annunciator panel, rudder boost is one of the things that needs to be extinguished in order for you to be ready to take off. Okay, so I'm just going to show you where that's at really quick. It is just south of your flight management computers, and I'm going to put my clicker on it because I know it. There you go. Hopefully you can see that. This is the rudder boost right here. Okay, I won't click it yet because I do that in my run-up area or as I'm taxiing or right before takeoff. Okay, another thing during your flows and checks that it's going to ask for is this, for you to check this. This is the alternate landing gear extension here, which if you put your clicker on it doesn't do anything, but this is where it's at. This is what it's telling you to check. Also too, when you are doing your before start checklist, you are going to be asked to check that the passenger manual dropout is off for the oxygen. It's on this side here where you see my mouse, and then to pull the system to the ready position, in order for them to do that, it's going to also ask you to check this and ensure that it's on, and that lever system is right here. I'm just going to click it on. I'm not going to come back to that one because I usually will forget that. Alright, so let me use the A button to scroll over or toggle over to the flight management computers, and see now it's nice and visible to me. I'm not at an angle, I'm not bending my neck. And then of course, if you want to make it go up or down, use control and backspace, or control and enter. Control and enter makes it go this way, control and backspace makes it go this way. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to input a flight plan. One thing that I recommend doing, you don't have to, it's all based off of your budget, but I would recommend getting a subscription to the Navigraph, because Navigraph will update this automatically when you use the update panel of Navigraph to update all your aircrafts with the current AirCAC cycle. This is all updated, so everything is good to go. If you can see here, here's the dates. When you buy this aircraft sometime in 2013, it gives you an older database for your airways and VORs and SIDS and stars and all that good stuff. Mine is updated, and I like to keep it updated again because I fly online, and they usually expect that you're going to have the up-to-date routing information in your FMC and that you're capable to do so. You don't have to, but it sure helps when they tell you to go direct to a waypoint and you actually have it. So here it says no flight plan, no big deal. First thing we're going to do is go to here to position initialization. Here is where the latitude and longitude is already here. However, to technically have it where you want it to be, we're going to just come over here and put in Ontario's ICAO. Here it is here, and we're just going to drop it in right there using this left selection key, or line select key rather. And for sure, apologize for me if I'm not using the right nomenclature for stuff. I've never been asked to do tutorials, so here I am doing one, so bear with me. Feel free to leave comments down there correcting me, because if I'm saying something wrong, don't hesitate. I like constructive criticism. I was in the Army for several years, and that's how we lived. Anyhow, so that's in there. If you click this next button here, what it's going to do is just bring you back to your GPS's and FMS position information, you don't really need to worry about that. So you can just click here on flight plan. Now it brings us to the active flight plan page, which we're getting ready to input. Our destination today is Ontario, or excuse me, is Fresno, and I think it's a metropolitan airport, and the IC is KFAT. Plug it in there with using the line select key. Our alternate is going to be Bakersfield, which is Kilo Bravo Foxtrot Lima, and we have that in there. Now, the great thing about this aircraft, it does recognize airways and jetways. So if you have a jetway, you can put it in here. It'll automatically stay discontinuity until you put another 2-point in here in the flight plan. Today, we don't have any airways, but just if you did, it would just be simple as dropping in, let's say a jetway was Juliet 72. You would just type in Juliet 72, use the line select key, and then click in your next waypoint to wherever it was. So no big deal. Today, actually, and then the same thing with your fixes and your VORs. You can put all of that stuff in here just as it is and use the line select key. Another line will come up and it'll have the VIA and the 2, and you just do the same thing. If it doesn't come up, you just click next because you're running out of room here, and you continue on the next page. In this case, we're not flying online. I've already designated myself what runways I'm departing from and what runways I'm arriving to in Fresno, so let's do it. So instead of me having to put anything here, all of my points I can get to using my departure and arrival, because the transition points of leaving this departure of the Palm 9 is Echo Hotel Foxtrot, and arriving at the Alta 8 star is Tango Tango Echo, and you'll see how I find them and how it plugs it in. Otherwise, if they weren't there, I could just simply type them in, plug them here with the line selection key. Alright, so come here. Let me zoom in a little bit because I don't know how well you're able to see this. Alright, so here's the departure and arrival button. Click that. We're going to do our departure information from Ontario. Left click that, and here you go. Automatically we see the Palm 9. We're going to just plug that right in using our line select key and make that the active one. You can see SEL or selected will show right next to that under your SIDS. Our transition is Echo Hotel Foxtrot. Click with your mouse, left click, there it is, and we are going to be departing from runway 8 right. There that is. Now, once you get all that information plugged in, it's going to ask you to hit the execute button. So that's exactly what we'll do. Here's the execute button, left click, bam. You see already that we've got some information now on our active flight plan. Once I finish the flight plan, I'm going to explain what these are and how to manipulate them if you want to use your vertical navigation or VNav, which I highly suggest that you do on the plane. It's very nice. Alright, so if you want to scroll through and just see what you got so far, you got everything up to the transition point of the departure, or SID, which is Echo Hotel Foxtrot, and then it automatically defaults to KFAT because that's our destination airport. Once again, hit departure arrival button. You're going to come right over here and click on arrival, and we are using the Alta 8 arrival today. Left click, boom, there you go. Now, the Alta 8 arrival does not have a transition. I say again, it does not have a transition, so we're not even going to worry about that. But I believe once I select the ILS runway, I'm going to get the transition that I want, which is the Tango Tango Echo, and if not, we'll put it in. So here is our ILS. We're going to be coming in ILS runway 29er right. I'm going to right click it. Now it's asking me for the transition that I'm going to be using, and I'm just going to select Alta, okay, because Alta is ultimately a part of this standard terminal arrival. There it is. I'm going to hit execute. Now let's review our flight plan here. There's the Alta that we see, and I absolutely do see that the Tango Tango Echo is not in here. Now I'm glad that it's not in here, because I want you to be able to see that it's in fact not in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate this flight plan to reflect having the Tango Tango Echo arrival, or transition for the arrival. So in order to do so, if I type it here, that will push the EHF down one. So I'm going to type it here. That way it will push the ALTA down. So I'm just simply going to type in, and mind you, I'm on the legs page now. If I go back to flight plan, it'll look a little bit different, just simply because it's getting the route through the legs page. Now if you hit next, it'll be blank again. So after you do your departure and arrival, if you're doing it the way I'm doing it, you want to manipulate the rest of your flight plan using the legs page. Okay, so we'll go back to legs. We're going to type in Tango Tango Echo. I'm going to click right here on ALTA, and it should push ALTA down. And there we go. It pushed ALTA down, and as you see, Tango Tango Echo is at automatically an altitude of 28,000 feet. That may be the minimum that you can be for that VOR, and it may not be appropriate for the type of aircraft that we're in, since it's a turboprop and not a turbofan jet. But you know what? We're going to use it because I'm doing a tutorial here and we're doing big things today, right? Alright, so now our flight plan is complete. If you scroll down, you can see that I have all the way down to runway 29 Romeo and right, and then as you see here in blue, this is our actual missed approach stuff that we'll do here. If we miss, have a bad approach, and we need to abort the landing, we can use that information. Now, our flight plan is good to go. We are good to go as far as having the flight plan put in. You're doing big things. Let me familiarize you just a little bit, really briefly, because it could take a whole day just to explain this whole thing here and really understand and use it. It's not that complicated. It's great. Like I said, familiarize yourself with the aircraft and what these buttons do. Let's go to tune right away. I mentioned earlier, as I was putting in the transponder code and the Unicom frequency in our COM1, that you could also manipulate the frequencies in here. So here they are. Here's the frequencies. Here's the standby frequency that would be on the right side of that the radio panel that we were using to put it in. Here's our nav1, and here's our transponder code, so on and so forth. You just simply use the scratch pad, select the line select key. If, for example, you want to put in a standby frequency, you just type it in, put it in your line select key. If you want to make it active, you just click on that same one. For example, just like this, let's say I want to make 128.300 active. Click on it. It comes right there, right down here, and then you just plug it in. Okay? And it comes right up here. Now, I simply, and this preset, I believe, comes from the radio panel up there. So I'm going back to 122.8. Here we go. I can simply do that and put it directly into there. No big deal. Now, one thing you can do if you want to clear this preset, you can come here, click delete, and click on the line select key. And on this one, it doesn't let you do it. But in a perfect world, that would make sense that you would do that. And that's what you'll actually do if you need to delete waypoints. You'll click clear first, and then you'll go to the line select key that you need that's next to the waypoint fix or VOR that you want to delete, and it will do so. So that's this panel. Here's our index panel. This would bring us back, for example, if you click on status, this brings you back to that very first page that we started before we started inputting information here. Go back to index, and these are all left clicks with your mouse. If you do position initialization, it goes back to those GPS coordinates. One thing that we will be using once we start our descent for sure is this arrival data. This arrival data gives us information based off of what we put into the flight management computer about our approach, our standard terminal arrival, and the runway and the approach to that runway that we're using. In this case, it's an ILS. It's not an RNAV, it's an ILS. So we're using ILS, runway 29 right. Now, usually when you depart, depending on what the distance is from your airport, you will not have the information of exactly what runway it is. And even if you do have it, depending on how long your route is, that information changes, and that's why there's ATIS. In this case, we're flying online. I'm doing this just for tutorial, so we already have that information. It's telling us here our runway threshold is 332 feet. That's the touchdown elevation. Once we get our ILS stuff set up, we're going to turn our course indicator to heading 2901, and the frequency of the localizer is 111.30. The good thing about this aircraft, that's not a necessity that we need that, because simply we do have RNAV capability, because this flight management computer is an FMS in which this plane follows that. So that would be a radio navigation or radar navigation approach. But if we switched it over to our VR1 locator and our using our heading needle and all that good stuff on the nav radio, then we would use this frequency in order to localize ourselves. Okay. Now, moving right along. Of course, here is a shortcut to legs. We know what legs is. It's the same button that'll show us our active flight plan. Our direct to is exactly that. If you're familiar with an FMC, you'll know that if we're flying and the air traffic control gives us, hey, November 350 Kilo Tango, you're cleared direct, Pomona, then, or this POM, then we would click that, execute, and the aircraft would begin flying directly to that waypoint, and then pick up the rest of the waypoints that we have programmed in our FMC. So that's what the direct to is. It also has a capability here for you to look for the nearest airports in case you have to make an emergency landing or something is altered. This message is pretty much self-explanatory. If you get something FMC wants you to know, or FMS in this case wants you to know, it's going to be here. Flight plan, we've been through that. Legs, we know that's our active flight plan where we can manipulate it or modify it. Departure and arrival, we've used that. Performance is pretty nice to have in this aircraft because it's letting you know some certain information. Right now we have 3,631 pounds of fuel. We have been burning some since the right engine's been on. There's our reserves. Our ground speed is currently 0. If you click the next page, some more information is going to come up. APU, don't have to worry about that. We don't have one. This is just the engine flow, what's going on. Number 1 is not indicating anything because we're only using the number 2 engine. Once we activate the number 1 engine and get that cranked up and fired up, information will be displayed here. Next, if you want to know the nautical miles, now this doesn't change during flight, so it's just letting you know it's 194 nautical miles from Ontario to Fresno. This is letting you know the average fuel pounds per hour, so this aircraft uses 66 pounds of fuel per hour, and the estimated time en route, or the time it's going to take us to get there, is 1 hour and 56 minutes right now because we're not moving. It really is not going to take us that long at all. Okay? Alright, moving right along. I am actually going to get to some of this while we're in the air, so don't worry. The MFD menu and the MFD advanced menu or display menu, I'm going to get to that, so don't worry. I haven't forgot about it. We're going to get to that in the air. And then of course you have this MFD data, which if you click on it doesn't do anything, so you know what? Don't worry about it. And that's pretty much the quick and the short of what those screens are. Don't be scared to experiment with them. That's the only way you're going to find out what you need to do. Alright, without further ado, let's get back up into the virtual cockpit here, which we were already in. We were just using a zoom in feature there, using A. Now, one thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that your aircraft is following the flight management system, which right now this is highlighted green, which means that it is. This course indicator line is also letting you know that we're following that. If you click here, it is going to switch over to VOR2, and that's where your bearing indicator and your nav, once you click on nav on the autopilot, will follow that. So we'll just cycle through it. As you can see, now the indicator pointed according to the course that is set in of 315. Okay. However, this is highlighted again. All we have to do is click it to get it back. Oh yeah, we're in business. Alright, now we've already set our barometric pressure of 30.02, and this is all set up. Now, One thing that I do want to let you know, if you want to turn on your terrain or radar during flight, you can simply click on this. Okay, if you highlight this bottom one, and usually I don't know why my little sub panel information is not knowing, but if you put that on, that's going to show your traffic right there, and you can click it and it'll, stuff will go off. It'll come off of your MFD or PFD, primary flight display. Like I said, if you click this is the terrain mode. It's going to show you, give you certain information regarding the terrain. And again, this is your radar for your weather, as you can see here. And you'll use this knob down here to supplement the range and tilt the radar up and down. And as you see, as I tilt it, it's tilting up and down. That's for another, and I'm not even gonna lie, I don't always use that, and I'm not the perfect person to explain that because I don't use it all the time. Here we go. Here on this bottom portion, it is showing your current comm station, which we know we put that in. It's showing our transponder. It's also showing the current universal time, or our Greenwich Mean Time, Zulu time. It's also showing the outside temperature of 23 degrees Celsius, and then it shows the comm too. If you click this button here where it says Echo Tango, that will start your chronometer for your flight time. Okay, I always forget to do that, so if I forget to do it, forgive me. This primary flight display can be in different formats. If you click on this, right now it's in the arc, you can also make it go in the map mode, okay, or the rose mode. I'm going to leave it in arc, and we'll be manipulating this one. If you want to select it, you just push this middle and it's selected. Of course, nothing changed there. Now, if you want to come over and actually see your entire flight plan, let me step back, take one step back. If you want to decrease or increase your range of what you're seeing here on your flight plan, all you got to do is come here and manipulate your range. And you could see, if you remember at the beginning of the video when I showed you the departure, how we do a right turn and go to heading 253, you can see here's our little right turn. Okay, and then when this where this intersection is, that's where we intercept that radio to go down to the Pomona or the POM VOR. Okay, so that's what that is. So as you can see, it's making this screen and this center multifunction display come in and out. And if you want to know what the range is, all you're going to do is scroll it. Now when you see these bands, this is always half of what the outer is. So if it says 20 here, the range that we set is for this to see 20 nautical miles out. Here is 10, and obviously here is 0, where your aircraft is at. If you continue to change that, I just switched it to 10, so now this is 5, and it'll tell you on the enter. So right now, this I believe has a max range of, let's say, 500 or 640. It's even further than that. So 640 divided by 2 is 320, and then all the way to the center is 0. It's pretty cool. Like I said, they did a good job simulating the Proline 21 avionics. So we're going to leave it right here. Now, if you want to look at your flight plan in its entirety, you're going to have to mess with this one and not this one. Okay, you're going to have to use the center one. You're going to come over here to Format. You're going to come back over here to this top one where it says Menu Advance, and you're going to scroll down to Plan where it's highlighted in blue, and then you're going to select right in the middle. Now it's going to show you your plan. In order to show you your plan, you're going to need to hit Shift F5 because you cannot look all the way down in the center of the aircraft and see this and use your flight management system. Now what you're going to do is you are going to find the one that says MFD Advance, and you're going to click on that. Now to center it, let's say you're in flight and you want to check your plan again and you want to center it on the waypoint, your next waypoint, you're going to hit to waypoint. In this case, our waypoint is right here. We're at Ontario, so there's no need to do that. Now as we advance it, we're going to hit next waypoint, and you're going to see the aircraft move. And you're going to see your waypoints move. And you can scroll all the way through your entire flight and see. And then again, I can decrease what the range selector is so I can get a better snapshot of what it's going to look like. So you're just going to come here to the range and decrease it, you know, if you want, all the way to 10. Bring your FMS shortcut screen back up, hit next waypoint. Okay, and you see the runway right here, and then it goes into the missed approach. If you hit previous, it's going to do exactly that. It's going to do exactly that. All right, now lastly, before we get going, because I really think this video is going to be super long, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's my first one. It's going to be a super long video. You guys can critique me and chew me out, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I got a thick, tough skin. But what I want to do now is explain how the vertical navigation works in conjunction with your FMS before we get to the panel. So as we're done looking at this, let's go ahead and put our format back to the ARC format. Again, right here in the center, left click, boom, it'll put it right back there, okay? Now, let me pull up our legs page. Now, if you notice something here, we're going to take off. I'm going to use the vertical navigation, and for the most part, it's got us going up good. POM or Pomona is at 7,000 feet. Buck is at 14,000 feet. Now watch what happens on the next point. It goes back down to 12,400 feet by default. Now I don't want the plane to go up and then go back down. For sure I don't want the plane to go up and go back down at EHF, okay, which that is our transition point out of here, okay, and our flight is not that long. So you're going to have to do a little math, you're going to have to do a little bit of calculations if you're doing a short flight like this and the waypoints don't match up with what your cruising altitude is. Our cruising altitude today is going to be 21,000 feet. Now, in order to manipulate this, don't worry so much about this side here, which is your speed, which you're going to be handling anyway using the throttle. It's all manual. You'll see at this point it's 14,000 feet. So what you can do, and you're going to look at the nautical miles, okay? So it's from, once you get to this point to Buck, it's heading 389er, and it's 20 nautical miles, okay? Up to 7,000 feet. Now, from that point to the next point, it's 23.6 nautical miles. So what you can do is add another 7,000 feet, because you know you can do that within that time frame. And if you add another 7,000 feet to that altitude, that'll get you right where you want to be at 21,000 feet. So that's what we're going to do. So what you're going to do is you're going to click slash, and we're going to click 21000 or flight level 210. You have to put the slash there in order for this to work. Then you're going to use the line select key right next to the 12,400, and you've just managed to change it. Now we want to keep our EHF around, and you know what? You know, to be on the safe side, let's see here, 64, then here. So looking between these two, that gives us, between Tango Tango Echo and Alta, that gives us enough for a good scent. So I'm going to be safe enough to say we can pass Echo Hotel Foxtrot at 21,000 feet, because for us to drop down 17,000 feet, that's gonna give us roughly 67 miles to do that, and that should be more than enough. So we're gonna make this crossing here the same. So just left click this so you don't have to type it in again, and look, what do you know, it comes back up, and you're just gonna right click it there. Now for our Tango Tango Echo, we might want to think a little bit differently and at least get that down to where we're going to be crossing that, let's say at let's see, boom, Tango 11, so 41 to Alta, you know, so let's just get that down to maybe 15. We'll say Tango Tango Echo, we want to get down to at least 15,000. So slash 15 3 zeros. Plug it in. Now what we've effectively done is set up our virtual navigation data in the system, which makes sense because if you look, it's down the runway 29, which is 390 feet on the touchdown. That makes good sense. The final waypoint when you're on final story is 1,800 feet, which looks good. Then 2,800, 35, 80, 15,000, 21,000, and we can always adjust this in the air. But now we have a good climb, a realistic climb to 21,000 feet, and we have a good descent in our vertical navigation. That, folks, is pretty much all you need to do here to make sure your vertical navigation looks good. Alright, so let's get some stuff going here. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my altitude and I am going to bring us up to 21,000 feet. So that's what I'm going to put in the panel. Boom, there it is right here, flight level 210. Now this altitude knob, by default when you click it, it goes in increments of 1,000. If you don't want it to do that, then you just simply right click for 100 inputs versus 1,000 inputs, and it'll tell you that once you hover over it. Okay, the heading of the runway for our departure, I am going to plug in 76, and you could do this thing too. I could right click for 10 degree increments, but I'm just going to 76. So I'm not going to do that. All right, now you can mess with the speed or not if you want. What I do with the speed, I just put in up here because I really don't use this, and there's no other place to put your V speeds in. I put my rotation speed in here, which is 107. Almost there. The one they needed to make easier was this one. They didn't. All right, that's my daughter in the background. All right. So here we go. So for the most part, we have our panel all set up and ready to go. We've got our heading set. We've got our VNav set in our FMS. And another thing that I noticed too that didn't work was the yaw damper when I took off on the last flight. So go figure. Now the yaw damper, I believe, is managed and comes on automatically when you're in lateral navigation, which we will be, and in the VNav. Okay, so what we can do, since we know we're going to be using lateral navigation, and this one on the primary flight display up top, it's not going to say lateral navigation like it does on other aircraft. It's not going to say LNAV. It's just going to say FMS because we're following the FMS. So let's get that set up now so that when we take off, all we have to do is activate the autopilot to follow what we want to follow. So click heading and then click the nav button, and you can see automatically FMS comes up over here. We're going to do the same thing for virtual navigation, which is the VNav right here. We click it on and it's VAlt, and it already saves it. And you can see the flight director, which is already on, is already telling us what we're going to have to do once we depart. So now your autopilot is pretty much already set up for our departure using the FMS and our vertical navigation. Anytime during our departure, if you don't like how many feet per minute or how fast you're going up per nautical mile, you can adjust that and just use the verses here and the flight level change on the autopilot, and you can adjust that. And then once you get back to the top of your climb, you can go back to VAlt and then wait for your top of descent, which it will show on here. Your top of descent marker will show on there. Okay? Alright, so with no further ado, let's get number 2 started and let's get out of here so you can see what this thing has to offer. So we're going to come right back over here. I'm going to advance just a tiny bit. And then once we get them started up, we'll turn on our engine anti-ice, which is part of the checklist, believe it or not. Oh, wrong switch there. So we got start on the left. Now that I've already started the right engine and it's been going for a while, I'm gonna right click this on the mouse and bring that down, and this will stay up. Once the left engine is started, we'll bring that down too. But here's the engine auto ignition, and the reason that's there is when you're in flight, if you need to restart the engines while you're in the air or something goes wrong, that'll enable you to do so. Alright, so let's see the engine here stabilize. And I must say I burnt more fuel sitting here doing this tutorial than I normally would have to get going. Normally I get it in real quick and I'm out of here in no time. But again, I'm trying to do a tutorial. Hope this is helping people that need help with this aircraft, because like I said, there's not a whole lot of information on this aircraft. Alright, so we got it stabilized here. We're going to go down and put this into flight idle, or to low idle rather. Move that up. Now, one thing that I'm going to do, which you're going to say, hey, don't do that, I'm going to do it, is I'm going to bring our propeller levels back a little bit, simply because this aircraft, when you taxi this aircraft, Carenado seems to, along with other propellered aircraft, it's not just this one that's simulated, it just speeds out of control on the ground. You can't control it. I've noticed that if I pull these levers back as well during my taxi, that it's a little bit better to control, and that I'm not over speeding on the taxiway and fighting the aircraft to stay under speed. So I'm going to bring these back just a hair for my taxi. Once we get to our run up or before takeoff, I'm going to advance both of these all the way up like you're supposed to anyway. Okay? Alright, what do we have on the annunciator panel? Alright, we need to get the left generator on, and let's see here. We'll do our bleed errors, and we'll do all that stuff as we begin to taxi. Let's go ahead and get our beacon light on and our nav light, which technically the beacon and the nav light I should have had on before I brought the aircraft to life, but I'm doing a tutorial, so guess what? I don't care. Alright, so we got that on. We got those lights on, and then we'll be bringing all the rest of the lights on. And let's just get those wing light on really quick. And I do believe we need to close the exit, so let's do that. Main exit is closing, which of course we would have made sure all the passengers were on before we started the engine, but I just don't want to make sure it's open, and we're trying to handle business here. Alright, next I'm going to turn on the right generator. So the right generator is now on. I'm going to turn on the engine anti-ice levers or switches, and you hear the engine's bogged down, and that's actually part of your checklist. Now, what's not part of your checklist right away is this ESIS, which is the link to get your secondary horizon on, which at this point is off. I'm going to turn it on now because it takes a little bit for it to initialize, so it's right here. So let me turn that on. Left click, and then you're going to notice here that it is going to initialize. It takes a little over a minute to initialize, so we'll wait for this to come up. In the meantime, I think I'm almost ready to taxi. The only thing I want to do, which I don't want to mess with when we're turning the rest of our stuff on, is I don't want to worry. This plane turns to the left a little bit, so I'm going to be adjusting this. Let's see. Back to 0. I'm going to be adjusting this just a little bit, maybe to 5%, so that when I go down the runway, it's not pulling to the left. And again, that has to do with the winds and stuff like that, but I'm going to do that anyway. Alright. So, let's take a quick peek at our annunciator panel and see what we got left. Alright. And it's just saying reverse is not ready because I have the propellers not in the full position. So don't worry about that. Once I put those propeller levers back in the full position, this will go off. So don't worry there. Auto feather. Alright, the rest we will do over there. Let's go up here and make sure our DC load is on both, which it is. They're at 80%, and they're at 80% because I reduced them a little bit. I'm going to turn on this master light panel light switch, even though it's going to be light throughout the duration of our flight, just because I want to. In case I needed to turn on a light, I wouldn't have to. That'd be one less switch to do. My mouse is freezing here. We're going to turn the no smoking and fasten seatbelt on. If you do just click it back to the center position, you just click down, it just only turns on fasten seatbelt. I happen to turn on the no smoking and the fasten seatbelt sign. And again, up here, another thing you want to pay attention to is here's your gear extension, retract, and extended speed. So what this is basically saying, the gear extension and gear extended speeds are the same. This just means that they don't want you flying the aircraft faster than 184 nautical miles with the gear out and extended. And it's also saying please don't extend or drop the landing gear any faster than 184 nautical miles. Gear retract, please don't try to retract the gear past 166 knots. I'm sorry, I'm saying nautical miles, knots. 184 knots, 184 knots, 166 knots. Approach flap, same thing. Don't extend those flaps above 202 knots. You get the drift. Alright, so we're going to taxi. There's no aircraft to my left. So what we need to do is we need to come out here to the left, pick up the eye lead here, and we're going to bring it on out there. And, you know, hopefully the taxi is just as I said it would with those condition levers there, not too crazy and too hectic. If you want to monitor your ground speed, like I said, you know, I do need to get a bit better video card, but it's kind of hard to be looking down. Your ground speed is here, so if you hit Shift F2, that brings that screen out and you can see your ground speed as you're taxiing. Or, big or, you can just simply look out the window and say, hey, I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow. We get our pitot heat, auto feather, prop sync, and all that stuff on here in a minute. Going to put that on. I'm also going to put our recognition lights on. We'll leave strobe off and landing lights off, obviously. Now, one thing that you're going to notice on your charts too is that the bleed airs should be on. So, and you can see on your enunciator panel, they're right here. They're off as well. I'm going to turn them on. I'm going to turn them on now. There we go. Just to get it over with. Again, when you do your checklist, you're going to be handling all this, looking at some of this stuff more times than you want to. So as we taxi, I'm going to put the aircraft into takeoff prep or takeoff readiness. As soon as we get straightened out of here, I'm going to drop the flaps to an approach flaps. I like taking off with approach flaps with this aircraft. Seems to lift off really nicely. There we go. I'm just trying to find a happy medium for this throttle. There we go. It's not too bad. As you get it moving, you can kind of play with the throttle. You'll figure out, you know, where you need to be with this aircraft. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop those flaps down. So not too bad of a taxi. Like I said, I've noticed reducing the propeller levers and the condition levers down to idle, that, you know, you don't taxi that crazy, you know, where it's just out of control, where you don't even like to drive the plane on the ground. That's one of the first things I do once I land this aircraft and I get across the runway threshold at the hold short line. Man, I reduce those condition levers and propeller levels significantly. And one thing this aircraft does too, it pulls to the left as you're taxiing. So move here and just keep a nice little taxi speed and start getting some of our switches on. Hopefully, without that's where the track IR would come in handy. But I don't have track IR. I need to get the updated one. So maybe the old lady will buy me one for Christmas. Mi mujer bonita. If you guys want me to do this tutorial in Spanish for people that understand Spanish better, just let me know. I can make it happen. Alright, so now we are taxiing parallel. I think we're on Papa. We're taxiing parallel to the runway, which, I'm just going to have to come to a complete stop and get the rest of our stuff on, and we'll just call it a run up, because it's pulling too far to the left for me to take my eyesight off. Now I'm still debating on whether I'm going to stop this video and do a part 2, since it's going to be such long of a video. That way, I'll try to explain everything I need to explain on our departure, and then start it back up when there's more information for you guys on our descent, how to manipulate the VNav and do an approach. My approaches, I usually use the FMS unless I'm given a visual approach by air traffic control to bring it in, and then I always hand fly the aircraft down onto the deck. So if there's weather, like I said, I follow all of the procedures necessary via air traffic control in the ILS situation, and then once I get into a visual range, I follow the indicator lights on the runway, as well as the magenta indicators from the flight director for the glide path and the localizer, and I bring it in. Excuse me, I'm kind of all over the place here. So maybe I should have brought those propeller levels down a little. It's not so much that the plane is going fast; it's just pulling like crazy. I found a good little speed here. I'm having to use the rudder inputs, which is basically the tiller. Keep this thing by lead. Alright, once we get short of the runway, I'll set the parking brake. I will zoom through the stuff that we need to put on, and we're going to get on the runway and we're going to get in the air. And I found that little happy spot for the taxi right now. It took me a second there. I think I have the propeller levels up higher than I normally do, but I was able to kind of find a nice little taxi speed where I didn't have to keep messing with the... Of course, I didn't find it towards the end, but I did find it. Okay, let's go parking brake on. Let's run through it. We already know where that rudder boost is at. Let's put that on. Again, this is a flow. This will be part of your checklist, but I'm doing it as a flow. My own flow. Alright. Next, we are going to want to make sure we turn this ignition switch off by right-clicking. All three are up. These two are up. Auto feather is now armed. Coming right over here. Let's get our pitot heat on. Pitot? I never say that word right. At this point, we're going to put our landing lights on as we're getting ready to come onto the runway. We can make sure that the ice protection is auto once we get in the air. I don't remember what the checklist says, but that's what we're going to do. Alright, now if you look on the annunciator panel, we only have the one announcement there. So let's bring our levers all the way up. Let me just click and make sure they're 100%. They are. What do you know? We have an extinguished light that we didn't want on. Perfect. Alright, let's check this panel. bleed air is on. That's perfect. And we do have our flaps set for approach. I've already set the rudder trim. Takeoff trim is not necessary in this aircraft, or at least hasn't been for me. Alright, everything looks good there. Let's do one last check on our fuel amount. So we're looking at about 1,300 pounds per. And then again, you can also bring this up. You can look at your performance, and we have 3,577 pounds of fuel, now 76, so we're good there. Just want to make sure that how much we burned. Let's bring our condition levels all the way up. Now, one thing you want to make sure you do when you get off in this aircraft, you do not want to keep your throttle all the way up and put your props into the red. I did it once, just messing around and see what happened, and I lost an engine. So this is simulated very well when it comes to that. You do want to keep a check on your N1 and your prop and your torque. Okay? You don't want to do all this, get this flight ready, blah, 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 blah. At this point, I would make sure that my transponder was Squawk Charlie. Well, actually, I would have done that before I started taxiing. It's already on, so we're good. At this point, we're giving clearance. Let's do what we came to do, and let's have a flight. All right. It's actually dark here now. I backed the time up a little bit so that you guys could see this flight in the daytime. Nice little taxi on to the runway. We already got our lights on. That's been checked. We're at 8 right. Now the beautiful thing about having everything set up with your autopilot is you just simply, we're going to follow the flight director up. Once we get gear up and flaps up, we are going to just activate the autopilot. Just pull into the left as I said it would. Little correction there. Let's keep her down the runway. Keep it on the runway here. Alright, let's rotate. Now positive climb. Gear up. Flaps up. Just bring the nose down just a hair.
Too low, terrain. Too low, terrain. Too low, terrain.
Those props up.
Too low, terrain. Too low, terrain.
And we're going to go into the right
Too low,
turn.
terrain.
I just initiated the autopilot. Keep an eye on my props. Alright. Terrain warning there. So now I'm going to go ahead and bring these props to about 90% in the condition levers. For climb thrust, I'm going to make sure they're the same, 91 and 91. Got that for prop sync. As you can see, we're following right along the flight plan. We're going up. Our virtual navigate, I don't know why I want to call it that. Our vertical navigation and our lateral navigation have been initiated. I'm controlling our thrust or propellers. Alright. Here in a second, I'm going to bring the propeller levers back. Let's just do an after takeoff checklist really quick. Flaps are up. Gear is up. Let's go for our taxi light off. Strobes are on. Landing lights are on. Like I said, if I try to click the yaw damper, I don't think it's even gonna, I mean, you're supposed to click it once you take off, but since I'm using the vertical navigation and lateral nav, I don't think that's necessary. Alright, so if you notice here, we got good speed, and we are using our VNav. So as you can see here, our next waypoint is going to be that we're on the radial actually right here. That's what this is. Till we get to this intersection. And then our next waypoint is going to be POM. And if you want to take a look and see what Pomona's altitude is supposed to be and why we're not climbing, Pomona's altitude is 7,000. Once we hit the intersection though, we're supposed to be at 3,320 feet, and that's why the plane is doing what it's doing. Now you'll notice that it's the 7,000 is in magenta here. You'll notice that our vertical navigation has brought the plane's nose up to 1,100 feet per minute, or now back down to 1,000, so that we can climb to 7,000 crossing Pomona, which you can also see here, which is in 13 nautical miles or 3 minutes. Alright, so let me bring these propeller levels back a little bit. My son is awake now from his nap. Bring those back about to 50%. Those are at 50. Just keep an eye. Props is right on the cusp. Our N1's looking good. We're not in the red. We're at 92%. That's the condition levers we brought back. Just monitor our speed in the climb. And of course, now that you're in VNav and you don't have to worry about things, this could give you time to continue. You've already done your after takeoff checklist. This will give you time to look at your flight management computer and manage other things. I mean, you'll be talking to air traffic control, manage some other things that you need to manage. Now we can put our ice protection into auto. And our windshield into ice. We'll just put that up. Really, this is necessary, but we're just going to have it up because I know once we get up to a certain level, ice will be possible. Just checking panels. 190 knots. Of course, if you look at our ground speed, it's 214 with true airspeed of 208. And of course, I forgot to initiate the time. I'm just going to do it to show you. Should have done it on the runway as we were taking off, but there we go. You see time has been initiated there. I'm just going around the aircraft making sure there's nothing else that I need to let you know before I stop this video is all I'm doing, so bear with me. Real quick, because I don't want to have to explain it in the next video. So, I said there was some other buttons on the FMS that I would address. Let's check our speed quick. Okay. Those buttons were the MFD menu. Now, if you click on MFD menu, we did mess with the MFD Advanced to see our flight plan. But if you go to the MFD menu, display will come up, hit the line select key. What this does is this declutters your primary flight display or your multi-function display, whatever you want to call it. So if I click as you click, you see stuff disappear. And if I only want to have waypoints on here, or VORs basically, and fixes and NDBs and all that good stuff, that's what's going to come on. If I don't want that on there, which I usually don't, I take it off. You can put your VORs on there. Okay, you see POM was a VOR and it was on there, so I'm going to leave that on there. You get in a situation where you need to see, an airport or whatever, or as we get closer, I may even put, leave airports on. And so that's what you got. That's what that button does. Let's check our speed here quick. Make sure. You always got to keep an eye on these climbs. Okay, next, I said that I would show you some more information on the performance. As you see now, we have both engines on. We don't have an APU. It's showing you the pounds per hour that is used based off of the flow. So 357 pounds of fuel per hour for both engines. So far used, our left engine has used, almost half, a little bit over half less fuel than the right, because we ran the right to keep the power on. Then you can see here, as I stated, 194 nautical miles. That's not going to change. That's just letting you know that's the distance between the two. Shows our ground speed of 209 knots. Shows our current fuel flow. That is just times 2. That's the 300 and whatever it was times 2, because we're running 2 engines. Now that you see this time went from almost 2 hours to 55 minutes, which that's going to go down a little bit too once we get into our cruise altitude of 21,000 feet. And you know what? I think you guys have seen it all in terms of what we need to do with this, or understanding what we need to do with this. There's no messages. Like I said, it's pretty basic, but it's advanced enough where you can have a good flight. You can have a really good flight. You've seen how to manipulate the altitudes. We're climbing just fine. In a perfect world, I would want our nose to come down a little bit, because I don't like dropping this much speed, but I'm going to let the vertical navigation still control. And again, you can, if I really wanted to, I can just, take off all the limits and have this go up to 21,000 by using the flight level change situation, just by hitting the verses or whatever and coming up. And then once we get to where, select your altitude hold and all that good stuff. But it's not necessary. I'm okay with the speed, as long as we don't get to a situation where we're losing too much speed. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a nice slow climb. Like I said, my next waypoint, which is going to bring us to the top of our climb, is going to be the Tubo at 21,000. So maybe that'll get us up there when we need to, and then we'll be cruising at that for a little bit. And then before we get to our top of descent, I will be turning the video back on. Again, if you want to see the range, right now I had it, I'm at 20 nautical miles for the range. As we begin our descent and all that good stuff, I'll look and show you what it looks like for the top of descent indicator on the FMS and all that stuff. And then too, we always can look here for what's to come as well. So you see, it's not a whole long flight, like I said, the plane is easy to get off the ground. There are some shortcomings with it. The taxiing is kind of funky to do with it wanting to run away, which, like I said, I've heard a lot of the planes do it. I have a Majestic. I fly the Q400, Bombardier Dash 8 Q400. I have other propeller aircraft. They kind of do the same thing, so I'm not going to completely bash Carenado for that, but it is kind of annoying. I'll tell you that. And then lastly, before I stop the video, you guys should know how to manipulate the cabin and what functions to move, because it is pretty cool to be able to go into the cabin. So if we go here, back passenger 2, that puts you in the aircraft. You can use your POV hat to scroll around, or you can do a lot of the, control enter to, move forward, and or control enter to move back, control backspace to move forward. You can do the shift control backspace to move to the left, control shift enter to move to the right, so that you can enjoy, because the cabin is very nicely done. I like it. I mean, the textures look really nice. Like I said, they did a pretty good job with most of this aircraft. They really did. So I'm not going to bash them on everything. If you want to get a little bit of a closer view, you can do that. Of the the wing and all that good stuff, so you can see a wing view landing. You can sort of zoom in, kind of see a really good picture of it. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop the video now. In the next video, I'll let you know how the rest of my climb went. We got about 900 or to 1,000 feet per minute, or per nautical mile right now. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. So I will come back and reshoot the video as we are getting ready to start our descent. So we'll see you in a bit.